So the next thing I want to talk about are adjustment layers. So we've begun to play around with these layers here. So we know that we can hide and show different layers. And another thing that we can change about layers is the effects we apply to each one individually or to the group in general. The way we do that is this icon right down here, kind of looks like a black and white cookie. It's this circle, which is our adjustment layer option. And when you click on that, you get this pop-up menu. So these are a list of adjustments. Now you can find these in another place in Photoshop. And a lot of people will do it this way when they're first learning, which is they'll go to Image and Adjustments. The difference here is that these guys, the regular adjustments, are permanent, whereas an adjustment layer is not permanent, and that's the one I would recommend you using, and we'll talk about why in a minute. Right? So an adjustment layer, for example, like solid color, if I go ahead and click on that, it is just going to fill my entire artboard with, or my canvas rather, with a solid color. I can choose what color that is. Okay. Now, at any point, I can grab this and decide I don't want this anymore. I can drag this layer to the trash can. Okay. Nice and easy. Now, with adjustment layers, we can control a lot of different things. So the first one I want to talk to you about is levels. Levels is a really important concept to understand in Photoshop. When you click on this adjustment layer, you get this box here that pops up as properties. I'm just going to move it here so you can see it a little easier. All right. And what this opens up is my levels histogram. Now, in here, this is charting the usage of dark and light pixels in this particular image, basically. So all digital color has a value from 0 to 255, which I've mentioned in a few videos now. 0 is black, 255 is white. So what this is saying is this is how many pixels are actually solid black. And what I can do is I can move this in, and whatever number I move it to, say I move it to 70 or 80, that's saying basically any number that was 80 or less is now being forced to 0. 255 being white, I can move this in. Now it's saying any number above, say 145, is being forced to 255 or white. And then this is that midpoint. And you can notice that everything is being affected by this, right? So the bus is, the banner is, all the layers are. Now this right here is our clip icon. This is important to do most of the time that you're adding an adjustment layer. You're probably going to be affecting just one layer. In this case, if I want to affect just the banner, I want to hit this clip, and now it indents this layer here. It's indented. I see this little downward dropped arrow. And what that means is as I mess with this, it's only going to affect the banner, not the entire image. Whereas if I, again, don't have that checked, it affects now the entire image. Okay. Now to give you a better idea of what levels do, let's use a different image. So I'm just going to put this back in here. And for that, let's open up the image called Sunset that I provided you with. Okay. And now there's only one layer, so we don't have to worry about where it's clipping to, but let's go down, hit Adjustment Layer, New Adjustment Layer, click on Levels. We get this icon here. So this represents our levels. This is our levels icon. And it's saying essentially that it's affecting the entire image. This box here will make more sense as you start to get better and more familiar with the program. So again, if I bring in my black areas, I can see more and more and more of the image becomes black. If I bring in my white areas, more and more becomes white. And my midpoint, if I just slide this over, I can start to see that there's so much more going on in this image probably than I originally thought. I can actually make out a lot more detail in here. So there's oftentimes in your photos, you'll see that there is a lot more information than what you initially think of. So if I wanted to make this a more dramatic or more moody image, I could easily do that. Let's talk about another adjustment. Let's click and add again, and this time we'll choose Hue and Saturation. Hue is the word for color. right? So what we usually think of with color, red, blue, green, those are hues. How light or dark a color is, in this case marked by lightness, is what's called the value. When you get a color that you're adding black to, it's a shade. When you're adding white to a color, it's a tint. And then we have saturation. The lower the saturation, the closer to, say, grayscale, or the brighter the saturation, the more intense that color level. And those are the three ways we typically measure digital color: hue, saturation, and lightness. Or sometimes you'll hear brightness. Right, so now same thing. As I slide these around, I'll get different color outputs, okay? Saturation, again, increases that. We could also do colorize, this checkbox here. What this does is it creates a wash of sorts. It makes the entire image monochromatic. So now we can just have a solid color over our image, whether it's a very bright color or a very dull color. Okay, let's jump back over to the bus banner and just see what that same effect does. So I click in here, hue saturation, and you'll see that everything starts changing to different colors. If I add colorize, the entire image kind of has like a sepia tone look if it's in the browns or oranges. I'm going to uncheck colorize just to see again the different effects that this has, moving each color over a little bit. Very brightly colored, which doesn't really look very realistic, or black and white. And again, if we hit clip, it only affects the thing that's right below it. Now, this is a little off. It's only affecting the thing below it, but the thing below it is the levels. So I would have to rearrange this. I'd have to pull this one down and now hit clip. And now it's only affecting my banner. So if I didn't like the colors, that orange and red that the banner had, I could change just those colors. Can't really do much to the black or the white unless you choose colorize. And even then, you'd have to lower this a little to get some color into the white. Or if you wanted some color in that gray, in that black rather, you could lighten it a little. But it's going to be very hard to add color to solid black or solid white. And as you play with this, there are ways to get much, much more control over it, and you'll start getting an understanding. Now, the other thing that happens with this, I'm going to unclip this for a minute. The order that these are in sometimes will have a pretty big impact. So you might want to just be careful of what's on top. So just the difference of putting the levels on top versus the hue and the saturation on top. And again, all I'm doing is grabbing one and dragging it down until I see that little blue line, and I can change the order of these layers.